Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to our stream today. My name is Arakko, and it is such a joy to have you aboard. Today we have so many fun, brand new X-Men updates to go ahead and go over. Plus, we're going to talk about some brand new developments over in the world of Spider-Man. I'm just so excited to go ahead and touch on some of the final moments for the Krakoan age of the X-Men comics. Plus, we have some brand new upcoming books starring some of our most central X-Men characters in the line, like Jean Grey and Storm. But first, per usual, over on our streams, I just want to talk about some of the reviews that we posted up over the past week. I really want to put an emphasis on this video review that we did over for DC Comics' latest issue of The Flash this week. Frankly, I don't know how many people are currently reading the Flash series over from DC Comics, but I really think the super imaginative way that Simon Spurrier, the author of the series, is really switching between the dual protagonists of Wally West and Barry Allen is super interesting. I am loving like the sci-fi, supernatural, and cosmic threats. Also, I think what Mike Deodato Jr. was doing on The Flash was super cool. But man, I think that Vasco Georgiev and Ramon Perez are just such a great artistic duo. And it's just such a joy to see this series have art that really matches some of the creative imagination from Spurrier. Plus, I think these sequences over in the gallery with Wally and Nightwing reflecting on the Titans was super fantastic. Frankly, I just cannot encourage you to open up your mind enough and to explore what DC's latest Flash series is putting down. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Okay, let's talk about some of the other comic books that we reviewed over this past week. We also had the opportunity to touch on X-Men The Wedding Special. Frankly, I thought that was such a joyous and fun comic book. I actually had the chance to check in with author Kieran Gillen's newsletter this past week, and it was super cool to see him commentate on how he just really loved how fun that storyline was, and he wanted it to be one of Marvel's last projects. It was so cool seeing the framing sequence from Kieran Gillen, fleshing out some of the relationship drama between Mystique and Destiny as they prepare to renew their vows over in that comic book issue. There were also just so many like ancillary storylines and really great additional sequences in that comic book. X-Men The Wedding Special is a great series and a great way to celebrate everything fantastic about the X-Men as the Krakoan age of comics comes to an end. Also, this week, it was just an embarrassment of riches in terms of both DC and Marvel Comics. We had the fantastic Rise of the Powers of 10. Okay, without further ado, I want to go ahead and welcome you over to our stream today. We have so much fun stuff to talk about, stemming from some of the very final comics in the Krakoan Age of X-Men titles, all the way to the brand new comic books that are gonna start up the X-Men's brand new From the Ashes line. Plus, we have the future of the Amazing Spider-Man franchise, which I think is going to be super fun to witness. Amazing Spider-Man 50 was a little bit apocalyptic in terms of the franchise, as it really dissolved like the relationship between Norman Osborn and Peter Parker. That's going to be so fun to check out later on in the stream, though. Why don't we go ahead and get started with our news topics here today? Our very first news story is actually going to be a preview of one of the very final comics in the X-Men's Krakoan Age of Titles. Let's go ahead and take a look at Adventures in Poor Taste's final preview for X-Men issue 35 here. This cover is just so beautiful, illustrated from one of the masterminds of the Krakoan age of comics, being Pepe Larraz himself. Just seeing so many of our X-Men characters assembled all throughout this cover is just such a joy to behold, stemming from everybody like Douglas Ramsey as Cypher, over to Pog, Emma Frost, and the rest of the Stepford Cuckoos. I really think that the X-Men books have done a really fantastic job kind of winding down the Krakoan initiative over in Fall of X. I really think Jean Grey's battle with Enigma is featured in Rise of the Powers of 10 issue 5 was just so epic and interesting to witness. Also, the X-Men's final battle over between Nimrod and some of the other intelligence over at Orcus, as far as it goes to some of the machines, was also a joy to witness here. But with both of those titles being so climactic, I think it's time for the X-Men to sort of reflect on all of the things that happened over in Krakoa. So let's go ahead and see what some of the interiors look like in X-Men 35/700. First off, I want to read a quick preview over from Adventures in Poor Taste. The end of an era. Uncanny X-Men 700, all good things must come to an end, and as good of a thing as the Krakoan era has been for mutant kind, its time has come at last. The tragedy and triumph of Fall of the House of X, the madness and mystery of Rise of the Powers of Ten, they have all come to their ends and led to this moment that will change the future of mutant kind for years to come. Written and drawn by an all-star led cast of writers and artists who have shaped the Krakoan age, this is one milestone no X-Men fan will want to miss. Also featuring a story of family by X-Men master Chris Claremont and a glimpse of things to come. So X-Men 35 written by some of our masterminds during the Krakoan age, Karen Gillan, Al Ewing, and Jerry Duggan. Frankly, I think one of the people missing here is definitely Simon Spurrier. Would have loved to see him included in the collection. We have art from so many great artists across the Krakoan age. Sarah Pichelli, Stefano Caselli, Jerome Pena. I wish we got to see more work from Sarah Pichelli and Jerome Pena during the X-Men's Krakoan age. Same goes for Lionel Francis Yu. We also have Phil Noto, who worked on so many X-Men issues recently. Mark Brooks has worked on so many covers for the Krakoan Age of Comics. Walt Simonson, very cool Marvel Legacy creator. Luciano Vecchio, illustrated Rise of the Powers of Ten, and also so many recent X-Men issues as far as the very late stage of Fall of X publishing initiative for the X-Men. We also have the mastermind of Immortal X-Men, one of my favorite comics in the Krakoan Age, from Lucas Werneck, Joshua Cassara, John Romita Jr., Sonny Go, and David Curiel. I just want to quickly mention here that the cover is also colored over from Marte Gracia. And here's the front of it coming in from Marvel Comics. After what Seth says, greetings, Arakko Braddock. Do you think you can predict the ending of the Krakoan era? Yeah, at this stage here, I really think the X-Men are definitely going to be leaving their base of operations over on Krakoa, and are really just going to be scattered across the globe right now as they begin to start each and every one of their core series. And with the X-Men currently dispatched of like most of their main foes, it's really hard for me to make like a direct prediction on what could happen next, especially with just so much of the publishing material teased for the next stage already being released to the public here. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the interior pages for the issue. I don't see any specific collaborators credited here, but this artwork looks so much like Joshua Cassara. This is such a beautiful page here over on X-Men 35, as it does a great job recapping the X-Men's complete history with really interesting prose and narration written across the line here. It's super cool to see the X-Men characters adapted from their very earliest elements to the very final moments within Krakoa, especially as we begin to see some of the morality for Professor Xavier stemming from those recent issues of Rise of the Powers of Ten come right to the forefront of the line. And once again, Joshua Cassara continues to just really explore so many elements of negative space and postmodern design across so much of his artwork over on X-Men 35. Also, in recent issues, we saw great sequences with Wolverine. This issue is no exception here, as we get a beautiful fight sequence with the older Wolverine, as well as just a beautiful panel bleed and so much epic negative space across the issue. Also, over on like this third or fourth panel here, Wolverine's expression and the way that he's just punching through the glass is such a great way to tap into the really visceral nature of this character, even as we have such a big milestone issue for the X-Men. I think so much of Dugan's recent writing over for both Laura Kinney and James Logan as Wolverine has been just wonderful. I'm not sure what these final panels over in our preview are teasing here, but it appears to be a fascinating light show over on the Pacific Krakoa. And our next page on X-Men 35 is actually a sequence written by Chris Claremont featuring some artwork from Salvador Larroca. I think it's pretty interesting to get to see the character of Nightcrawler start to recap some of the recent revelations that happened as a part of X-Men Blue Origins. The one thing about this page in particular, though, is I think Salvador LaRocca captures a little bit more melodrama, that Nightcrawler is trying to exude versus like what's actually on the page here. Overall, though, I'm super curious to see what Chris Claremont is going to be doing next over on his Nightcrawler series and just how dramatic this storyline gets, as it's supposed to be a really important piece to leave the Krakoan era off for so many of our mutant characters. That being said, though, I just want to take a few moments and say that I'm so happy that Chris Claremont is contributing something to this end of the Krakoan era for the X-Men, as this is just such a big franchise that Chris Claremont has contributed so much to, and I'm really happy to see Marvel giving him a really important storyline over in this key storyline for the X-Men characters. Okay, Hero Mode Podcast says, big fan of your work, Arakko. Would love to have you as a guest. Oh, thank you. Why don't you leave a YouTube comment here or something, and I'll go ahead and check back. That's really nice feedback. So based on some of the artwork we've already seen for X-Men 35, I'm really happy with a lot of the interiors and previews that we've seen. Joshua Cassara's artwork in that collection looks just so beautiful, and I'm really, really excited to see what's next for our mutant characters. I want to take a quick break here, rest my voice, and then we're going to talk about the brand new issue of Marvel Comics Spider-Man series. We'll be back in just a few moments. I have been absolutely loving what Marvel Comics has been doing with their current Amazing Spider-Man series, but I was so apprehensive about Zeb Wells seemingly dissolving the relationship between Peter and Norman Osborn that he spent so much time building up to across the Amazing Spider-Man. Plus, the Amazing Spider-Man 50 also teased the fact that Peter Parker is going to be returning to some of his villainous ways. And I think for so many readers, this is also disappointing because Peter Parker has recently been imbued with the sins of a goblin and has also been through a more negative storyline recently over in the comic book tale. The Amazing Spider-Man 50 kind of shifted back over to that storyline and saw Peter Parker once again become absorbed with the sins of the Goblin and seemingly take on this villainous persona of a Green Goblin character. Plus, we have so many of these Secret Six characters lingering just in the background of the comic book, and we have Norman Osborn returning to his villainous ways as well. So it feels like the Amazing Spider-Man is currently embarking on one of its darkest storylines yet. Let's go ahead and see what Zeb Wells and some of the brand new artistic collaborators on Amazing Spider-Man 51 can say about this brand new status quo over with Peter Parker. This issue, once again, continues to have the artistic contributions from Todd Nowak as well as Ed McGuinness. So I'm also pretty interested to see how Marvel is going to divide up some of the artistic interiors over on the issue as a whole. First off, let's go ahead and check in on the preview text over from Adventures in Poor Taste. Looks like this one was published on May 31st. The Sinister Six is back. As if the Green Goblin weren't enough, the Sinister Six has returned too. When it rains, it pours, and this rain is going to put Spider-Man into a world of hurt. Yeah, I like how on these Amazing Spider-Man previews, they actually have like a full list of the creators because they don't have that on each of the Marvel Comics previews that we see on AIPT. Okay, so issue 51 of the main series is still written by Zeb Wells, featuring artwork from Ed McGuinness and Todd Nowak. We also have inks from Mark Farmer, Todd Nowak, Cliff Rathburn, Wade Von Gronbadger, colors Marcio Menis, Eric Arcianiga, Brian Valenza, letters from VC's Joe Caramagna, and the main cover illustrated from Ed McGuinness and Marcio Menis. Man, I think this first page is so epic on The Amazing Spider Man, not only teasing some brand new status quo revelations for Peter Parker, but with the character of Chasm too. It really feels like the script is starting to get a lot more animated as we see so many Green Goblin heads laughing at Peter Parker and get to see a brand new interpretation of how the Winkler device is affecting Peter over in the comic book tale. I think this next page is so fascinating as it quickly switches protagonists from Peter Parker over to Chasm, as well as his love interest Hollow's Eve across the issue. I think it's just been so epic to watch these two characters start to assemble some of their plot threads and plan against characters like the Amazing Spider Man. I'm very happy to see what Marvel has in store for some of these characters, and I really hope we get to see some really stronger moves for Chasm and Hollow's Eve as the Amazing Spider Man continues publication. This next page is so gorgeous here. I think it's really interesting how the layout accommodates each of these Secret Six characters. And also, it's very tragic seeing the character of Sandman rejoin some of these other Secret Six characters after Spider Man had that brief encounter with him in the Amazing Spider Man Ravencroft issues, just following the gang war storyline for Spider Man. It feels like as soon as Spider Man handles one half of his rogues gallery with characters like those crime bosses, that in the background, these Secret Six characters are up to no good and causing chaos in just the other half of his life. Plus, on the next page, we get a direct tease of the villainous Norman Osborn accommodated with this phone cord, doing a wonderful job transitioning from the last page over to this current one. Watching Norman Osborn speak with such a tense facial expression is just heartbreaking in this Amazing Spider Man run that's done so much work trying to just humanize and empathize Norman Osborn as a character here. I just think there's so much interesting, emotional subtext in this issue of Spider-Man. I'm really happy with how this preview is able to leverage the main supporting cast over with the series. Super cool also to see some of the ancillary characters like Hallows Eve and Chasm featured in the issue. We're going to have a full review of The Amazing Spider-Man either Wednesday or Thursday of this week. I am very excited about the future of this book, and I'm curious at this point how long Zeb Wells is going to be able to stay on Marvel's main Amazing Spider-Man series. Feels like he's been going on this title for a really long time, and with such a dark storyline realized in the next couple issues, I'm really curious if this is going to be his swan song or if he has more left to say with the character of Peter Parker. Okay, next up, I want to go ahead and touch on a comic book that we haven't explored in a very long time. I actually had the chance this morning to get caught up on some of the recent issues of Miss Marvel Mutant Menace. This series is really cool as lately it's been mixing up so many disparate elements of Kamala Khan's life. I've already said so many good things about the work that writers Aman Vellani and Saber Perzada have accommodated towards Miss Marvel. I'm really happy to talk about how this character is starting to evolve in her follow-up series over as a mutant. This one features some beautiful artwork from Scott Godlewski, and I believe we have colors over from Eric Arcienega. Plus, interesting to see the Fall of the House of X branding featured on this cover as well. One interesting thing to note about this image too before we move on is I think there's a pretty solid sense of ambition on the cover. The way that Medusa, Karnak, and Lockjaw are laid out towards the top, accommodating Kamala on the bottom of the frame here is very interesting. I love that warped sense of perspective that Miss Marvel is realized with towards the bottom of the cover as well. Okay, so this is Miss Marvel Mutant Menace 4. Oh, the inhumanity. Let's see if I can get that one right again. Oh, the inhumanity. As Miss Marvel's mutant powers rebel against her, she turns to her original superfamily, the Inhumans. Medusa, Karnak, and everyone's favorite Lockjaw. Guest star as being a mutant continues to be no end of trouble to Jersey City's number one daughter. I realize that we definitely didn't give this issue enough context here. One of Miss Marvel's, first comic book series that she debuted in really featured the origin of her as an Inhuman character. Recently, Miss Marvel has kind of been shoehorned into a position as an X-Men character, so getting the chance to watch the X-Men version of Miss Marvel really reunite with her old super family of the Inhumans, I think is going to be super interesting. Without further ado, let's go ahead and check in on Miss Marvel's brand new conversations over with Medusa and Karnak in Miss Marvel Mutant Menace issue 4. I think this opening page here is so beautiful. I'm going to go ahead and read some of the text over from Amon Villani and Saber Perzada. Inhuman stronghold location unknown. Within the first 10 seconds of getting inhuman abilities from the Terrigen Mist, I had taken the form of my favorite hero. Within the first 10 minutes, I saved the girl from drowning on pure instinct. Within the first 10 days, I had adopted my own costume and moniker, one I've held on to with pride ever since. I never questioned any of it, what the Terrigen Mist was doing there in the first place, where it came from, if it was an accident or a twist of fate. I never once considered that this beautiful gift could someday become a curse, and now my powers are killing me. We immediately kind of transition into our next sequence here, showcasing characters like Red Dagger, also speaking to Kamala Khan, whose powers are going haywire over on this page here. Also think it's pretty interesting to see the character of Karnak interact with Kamala in all these instances. There's definitely a lot of dialogue on this page. Thankfully, though, I really think some of these interesting designs from Scott Godlewski really help move and just introduce a lot of tension towards these interiors as well. On this next page here, we can see a little bit of animosity between Red Dagger and Karnak, which I can definitely see as these characters were just introduced so quickly in the last installment of the issue, especially as we had so much character development between Red Dagger and Kamala Khan. I'm really liking the relationship drama between Miss Marvel, Bruno, and Red Dagger, and I hope that Mon Villani and Saber Perzada continue to explore some of these elements of Kamala Khan's relationships while detailing some of her relationships with other characters across the Marvel Universe, like the Inhumans and the X-Men. Also, just so many of these panel bleeds, and the fight realized between Red Dagger and Karnak is just such an interesting way to see this issue of Miss Marvel leave off. I would never have expected the final issue of Miss Marvel's second series as an X-Men to reintroduce the Inhumans characters, but I'm really happy they did. I'm also liking some of the background sequences over with the character of Lockjaw too. I think Godlewski is able to capture some great expressions for Lockjaw. Okay, overall, I'm very happy with the direction that Miss Marvel, the Mutant Menace, is taking. I thought this comic book series was really going to be focused on Lila Cheney and the character of Mojo the whole time, but it really looks like they've shown some progression and have introduced a little bit more characters than I would have thought they would over in the main tale here. Okay, I want to keep things rolling today and talk about the brand new preview of Marvel Comics Carnage series. This one for me has been so much fun to read each and every month here, as it's really been focused on the character of Flash Thompson trying to pursue the serial killer of Cletus Cassidy, Carnage. Watching Flash Thompson reunite with the anti-Venom symbiote and try and track down this character has been enthralling, especially as Carnage just has so much power and ambition in terms of the greater Marvel Universe. This one is also a lot of fun for me right now because it feels like Marvel is really embracing the science fiction world of the Venom property. Right now, the Venom property is dealing with different timelines, different character relationships, and like alternate versions of Eddie Brock as a character. So watching the publisher really just amp up and introduce so many brainy and interesting elements to the Carnage book is long overdue. Let's go ahead and check in on the 8th issue of the main comic book tale. This one is coming in once again here from Adventures in Poor Taste. Venom War is coming. And like any war, it will require new weapons and surprising allies. In this issue, Carnage finds both, plus more Meridius. A broken Flash Thompson, returning to reality from the Dark Force dimension, lands on stage at a black metal concert. Carnage follows, ravaging the audience who believes Carnage's arrival is part of the show. Flash, as Anti Venom, desperately fights to save whom he can and tries to stop Carnage with Anti Venom, only to find he's immune. Meanwhile, Liz Allen, also known as Misery, arrives with a weapon capable of killing both her and Carnage. In a moment, Flash gains the upper hand, blasting a hole through Carnage and disintegrating him. So we pick up right now in the aftermath of this event and to see what's in store next for this Carnage comic book. This one is written over from Toron Grandbeck, who's been writing so many great Marvel comics. I was such a big fan of everything she did on Realm of X recently at Marvel. Pere Perez has exceeded so many of my expectations. I remember him working at Valiant Comics, and now he's really rocketed to become a really interesting horror artist. We're really going to focus on the final page of this series and explore just how dark and dire some of his visuals have become here. Some of the colors on this issue are illustrated from Eric Arcienega, letters from VC's Joe Sabino, and a main cover illustrated over from Juan Ferreira. Okay, as we pick up over on the first page, we get an interesting recap of what happened in the last installment as Carnage takes this really deadly blow. I think the way that Pere Perez has illustrated this sequence is so beautiful. I want to read some of these interesting captions as well coming in from Carnage. The pain is unfamiliar. Carnage is frozen, no longer in control of himself, no longer in control. The symbiote flesh disintegrates from within, and though it burns, it is like phantom pain, hurting in a body no longer there. He is not in control, he cannot fight, he cannot flee, he is not frozen until he is no more. And then we see Carnage seemingly sneaking through a gutter towards the final panel. I also want to hand it to both some of the colors from Eric Arcienega and also how Pere Perez has laid out this page. I think the way that you're able to follow the motion between the panels of Carnage kind of sneaking through the gutter over with the symbiote goo here, super great visual that's really creepy to witness. On this next sequence, we also get Flash coming to grips that the character of Liz Allen has also evoked her own symbiote in the series. To be honest, Liz's inclusion in this comic book is actually one of the main reasons why I wanted to talk about this Carnage issue. Frankly, I think it's really interesting that if you go back and check out Amazing Spider-Man comics from like 5-10 years ago, you can actually see like Liz Allen as a supporting character. So the fact that Marvel Comics is like introducing this symbiote and accommodating it with the character of Liz Allen to me is really interesting. Right now, Liz also is one of the like head honcho characters over at Alchemax. So I feel like it makes this just really interesting and complicated for her as a character. I also want Marvel Comics to have a really interesting Scream series fleshing out Liz as a symbiote wielder, because I think the idea of this character is just, once again, a super interesting way that Marvel can expand the symbiote concept in a way that feels like it's more written for adults as opposed to just, needless violence across the series. Really interesting to see the symbiote version of Liz Allen react strongly to Flash's concern for her character as she states, "I am fine, Eugene," with Flash immediately stating, "Good God." This is the big reaction shot where we really get to see Flash react to Liz, and the Scream symbiote is Misery. He says, "Liz, when did you?" Her response says, "Not now, later." And I also wanted to focus on this final page in the preview here. To me, this once again cements Pere Perez's skills as a horror artist across Carnage. The way that he's able to visually interpret this interesting sequence and scenario for the character of Carnage is just so horrifying and beautiful. and really shows to me that Perez has a lot of ambition as an artist over at Marvel Comics. I'm really going to be looking forward to his future projects and what the future of the Carnage comic looks like at the publisher, too. I really think at some point Marvel Comics needs to start stepping into some of the source material that Al Ewing and writers like Toron Grönbeck have laid down across like these Venom and Carnage books, especially with some of the other writers like Ram V fleshed out characters like Dylan and Eddie so early on in their run. Really fantastic stuff over on this brand new Carnage comic book. Very excited to see what the future of Venom War holds for the symbiote users of the future of Marvel Comics. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the upcoming Ultimate books over at Marvel. In addition to featuring just so many interesting titles in the main line here, next week the publisher is actually debuting the brand new Ultimates comics, fleshing out the future of characters like Tony Stark in the Ultimate Universe. Adventures in Portace just published a review of the very first issue in advance of its release date. I want to go ahead and check out David Brooks' review of the Ultimates issue 1, written over from Dennis Camp. The anticipation for Ultimates is high, and for good reason. It not only expands on what Jonathan Hickman has set up involving the Maker and the new Ultimate Universe, but also reveals that it's crafted by two of the hottest young creators in comics, Dennis Camp and Juan Frigeri. Juan Frigeri has also produced so much epic work in the Marvel Universe recently. I think he's an excellent creator for this brand new Ultimate series. It's also quite clear for anyone who grew up in the 90s and experienced the original idea of the Ultimates that this series is truly important to the larger world building, something Black Panther, Spider-Man, and X-Men haven't dug into yet. Don't expect spoilers for Ultimates 1 as an advanced review beyond what we already know. Due out in comic shops on June 5th, I can safely say that this issue will sell as well as Ultimate Spider-Man or Ultimate X-Men. That's because the issue expands on the world quite a bit. We already know Iron Lad is the architect that gave Spider-Man his powers, and reveals a take on Avengers in a world where they're more than a covert operation than anything else. So I think currently in terms of the Ultimate line at Marvel Comics, I am just chomping at the bit to see the brand new status quo revelation regarding the Maker's Council or the character of the Maker or even the rest of our Ultimate characters. Frankly, the idea that we're getting a brand new Ultimate series so soon in publication here has me so excited to check out the future of the Ultimate Universe at one point. I really wish that comic books like Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Spider-Man, and Ultimate Black Panther really increase some of the elements of continuity and were able to showcase that this is a shared world between so many disparate titles as opposed to being just one singular series here. AfroSF says, I am very excited about Ultimates #1, the original Human Torch. Yeah, it's going to be really cool to see the original Human Torch fighting alongside the rest of the Ultimates characters. As we've seen in the trailer for Free Comic Book Day issue, the Ultimates is comprised of Captain America, Doom, Iron Lad as Tony Stark, Lady Sif, and Thor. So this team is very similar to Ultimates lineups that we've had in the past, alongside a few exceptions. People like Captain America and Thor have been in nearly like every single Ultimates team, but I really like the new interpretation of Doom and Iron Lad that Jonathan Hickman was able to flesh out in the Ultimate Invasion story. Also, in the Ultimate Universe one-shot, I really didn't expect to see Sif join some of these other characters, but I think her inclusion is actually a bit interesting. I really hope that Marvel is able to characterize this version of Ultimate Sif in a way that really displays a bit of difference or juxtaposition between the version of her in Marvel's main universe. Thor is down for the count, so their heaviest hitter can't aid them. The issue is divided in two parts. The first is Iron Lad and Doom's plan to create an Ultimates version 2. The second involves an attack by one of the Maker's placed rulers of a select sector of Earth. In these two parts, we see a team willing to do anything in their power to give heroes an edge in a world where most of them were never created or died outright. Yeah, I think one of the most vicious ways that the Maker has been able to attack this new version of the Ultimate Universe is by taking so many characters off the board by tampering with their superhero origins. The way that Ultimate Spider Man has been able to reconcile with that plot thread has been really interesting, but it's really been featured in the background of that comic book series as more subtext. Okay, so this includes the Pims, who we see in the trailer are working as pest control. I'll say no more, but Camp is doing compelling stuff with character in regards to Pym. You can see he's taking into account what we know about the 616 versions of the characters and standing it on its head. That makes it familiar and a touchstone to connect you to the characters while doing something entirely different. There's interesting psychology to back what Camp is doing with Pym as well, which should play out in an interesting way. Of course, Hank Pym is so famous for the domestic abuse that he actually dished out like towards, I believe, like the 70s over at Marvel. I am really hoping that if Dennis Camp is commenting on some of those elements in an upcoming Ultimates book, that it's done with a level of just subtlety and restraint that enhances the story instead of being problematic. That being said, though, I do think it's interesting that Hank Pym is such a flawed character in terms of other Marvel Comics heroes. Maybe having him, take on like an inferiority complex or something to that extent could really do a good job, like fleshing out a different version of Hank that still has some of these same issues, just experienced in a different way that, doesn't cause direct pain of other characters. This series is set in a world where all the heroes that should have come to be are no longer on the table. Yet, it appears superheroes are rising up and powers are manifesting regardless. One might say fate is involved. Although with the Ultimates led by Doom and Iron Lad, two super smart folks who may have immoral compasses. How they shift the power back to heroes could go in any direction. As we see in the Free Comic Book Day issue, named heroes are wiped off the map. This creates a heightened sense of stakes, aided by the fact that there's a literal aided by the fact that there's a literal ticking clock as to when the Maker will come back. Given Iron Lad's youth and Doom's history, it's interesting to see how they will lead this team. Throw in Captain America, who is from a time when punching Nazis in his youth was his go-to and now lives in a world where America isn't at all where it was when he left. And there's a lot of power dynamics in play that'll be great to follow moving forward. One thing about this review that is driving me nuts is how they talk about the idea that Captain America being a fish out of water character is a novel concept in terms of Marvel Comics. We've seen this explored through the Marvel Cinematic Universe, through countless Marvel Comics in terms of the main Avengers books. I think this idea that they're returning to like the fish out of water storyline for Captain America to me just feels so redundant and played out across so many other Marvel Comics series. This is also some of the same sensibilities that have really detracted my enjoyment for the main Ultimate Spider-Man book. I wish Marvel would really try and make new character dynamics and stories in these brand new Ultimate books that are out of continuity from the main universe here. Art by Figueroa lives up to the epic nature of the only superhero team in this universe. Figueroa has great strength in drawing a lot of characters on the page, which helps when there's a big showdown in the issue. There's also a good sense of scale and realism, which was customary in the original Ultimates and is seen here in a few key moments near the end of the issue. Panel layouts are well crafted with cinematic wide panels running down pages to classic 9-panel grids. Even though this issue is heavier on dialogue and character work, Figueroa always keeps your attention with not a single boring panel when it comes to talking heads. As seen in the first issue, the skies are the limit with the Ultimates. The creators fundamentally understand superhero comics while building on what we know about the characters and putting new spins on them. Ultimates is one of the most exciting superhero comics you'll read all year. It's ambitious with deep ideas and awesome action. As you can see here, Adventures in Poor Taste actually gave this issue a 10 out of 10. They said it has fabulous character writing, great art, and some really strong world building. One thing I want to say about, I would say, maybe the greater Ultimates line in general, is that each and every comic book has great art. The Ultimate Black Panther book has Stefano Caselli. The main Ultimate Spider-Man series has really beautiful artwork from Marco Cicchetto. Ultimate X-Men, probably one of the most beautiful comic books in the entire line, featuring just beautiful, beautiful work over from Peach Momoko that makes that Marvel comic book feel as close to Marvel manga as you could possibly get. Why don't we go ahead and preview some of the interiors over on a brand new version of that Ultimates issue 1 that we were just checking out here from Adventures in Poor Taste. This issue written over from Dennis Camp, featuring artwork from Juan Frigeri. We have colors from Federico Blee and letters over from VC's Travis Lanham. Okay, the first page here picks up in some of the aftermath of the Ultimate Invasion and so many recent attacks that have transpired across the Ultimate Universe. A really beautiful, just establishing shot from Juan Frigeri, setting up some of the themes of the overall comic book. The next page, it feels like we pick up immediately where that Ultimate Universe one-shot left off, is characters like Doom, Sif, and Iron Lad are all communicating against each other about how they can pick up the pieces and reunite as a team to fight back against the Maker and his council. There is so much strong color work and just really great layouts from Frigeri. The way that this page is able to interpret just some of the subtext over in the Maker in this third panel is really haunting, with so many panel bleeds over this last image as well, teasing the satellite device that also transpired in the recent Ultimate Universe one-shot in the background too. On this final page, the characters of Iron Lad and Doom are speaking amongst each other to try and undo so much of the damage that the Maker has caused to their version of the Ultimate Universe. Plus, they're planning on what to do when the Maker eventually comes back and haunts this version of the Ultimate Universe for so many of our supporting characters. Really interesting stuff. So many tense facial expressions and great page layouts here from Juan Frigeri. There is a lot of dialogue here from Dennis Camp, but it really looks like it's laid out appropriately, and there's a lot of plot set up already in this comic book that was established in books like Ultimate Invasion and that Ultimate Universe one-shot. Very excited about the future of the Ultimate line, and I'm happy that the direction of the publisher is sort of orienting itself more closely towards the battle with the Maker and some of the elements of his council as well. Okay, phenomenal stuff here. I don't think we're going to have a full review over on Ultimates 1, but we will have some coverage for the next issue of both Amazing Spider-Man and X-Men 35 to close out the Krakoan Age of Marvel Comics. AfroSF says the art for the Ultimates looks great. By the way, great t-shirt. Thank you so much, AfroSF. Big fan of this one. Haven't worn it on stream in a while. Okay, let's go ahead and see what's up next here. Okay, this next new storyline is going to be very, very exciting. It features a really interesting X-Men character reoriented in a super interesting position amidst the rest of the Marvel Comics line here. Let's go ahead and talk about Jean Grey's brand new comic book series in the From the Ashes publishing initiative for the X-Men franchise. Jean Grey soars in new Phoenix #1 covers. Check out all the covers for the debut issue of Stephanie Phillips and Alessandro Miraclo's Phoenix, on sale July 17th. So this brand new Phoenix series, only a month and a couple days away here. In the X-Men's upcoming From the Ashes era, Jean Grey takes to the stars to fulfill her destiny in Phoenix, a new ongoing series by writer Stephanie Phillips and artist Alessandro Miraclo. Today, fans can see all the covers that will grace the highly anticipated debut issue hitting stands on July 17th. There's a lot of really interesting things about this brand new Phoenix series. First of all, I really like the idea that Marvel Comics is finally like plunging Jean Grey into space. Some future covers have also detailed some of her space adventures with the Crimson Corsair, Cyclops' father. So I feel like this brand new upcoming series is really delving into some of the weird and obtuse elements of X-Men comics that made Krakoa so interesting. And titles like these have also, really have wanted to make me get a little bit more acclimated with these brand new X-Men comics. Earlier this week in Rise of the Powers of 10-5, one of the final issues of the X-Men's Krakoan Age, Jean Grey was dramatically reborn as the Phoenix and promptly saved all of existence from an all-consuming AI dominion. It was a battle outside time and space that will go down in Marvel Comics history, and only a taste of the awe-inspiring feats that Jean will continue to achieve in her new solo series, reigniting suns, suppressing black holes, and taking on the likes of Gore the God Butcher and Thanos' Black Order single-handedly. Yeah, so in addition to having characters like Corsair, like Nova, who I didn't even know was featured in this main comic book, we are also getting brand new interpretations of Gore the God Butcher, who is such an interesting villain in Marvel Comics Thor series with Jason Aaron. Plus, we have another Jonathan Hickman concept re-explored and reutilized in Phoenix with Thanos' Black Order. Jean is no longer the earthbound X-Man you knew. She's the Phoenix now and forever. Glorious adventures await, but while the galaxies beckon Jean for salvation, will they also be reminded of her appetite for destruction? It really feels to me like that sentence is really echoing the original Dark Phoenix saga that kicked off this really dark moment for Jean Grey as a character for the X-Men. Phoenix #1's variant covers include breathtaking pieces of Jean by industry superstars like Rose Besh, Greg Land, and Peach Momoko. We currently have the beautiful Peach Momoko cover up on the screen here. Oh, we have a variant from Marvel, former Marvel executive Joe Quesada. In an interview with CBR, Stephanie Phillips teased, thematically, I'm interested in exploring the interplay between human and cosmic forces that is happening within Jean. Some in the cosmic universe know her as Jean Grey, and some as the Phoenix. Yeah, I feel like across the Fall of X publishing initiative, they were really teasing this really strong and like primordial sense in Jean Grey. So really like dialing up those elements in a brand new series, once again here plunging Jean into space, to me feels like it's working with some of the most interesting and supernatural elements of Jean as a hero. I wanted us to explore how that mission will impact her as a hero in the stars. The book also looks at the hierarchy of the cosmos and where Jean fits into the hierarchy. There are some incredibly powerful entities, but in space, what will they think of Jean's presence as the Phoenix? Okay, let's get some of these brand new covers on Phoenix #1 up on the screen right now. Okay, let's see here. We actually have Joe Quesada's cover. This is the first time I've seen it. Look at that, really beautiful, super realistic here. I'm wondering if Quesada colored that or who the actual colorist was on it either. This is the foil variant cover once again here from Joe Quesada. I've seen this one already. This is the variant cover from AKA. I think this one is really, really tremendous. The framing and the pose that Jean has on this cover is really tremendous here. I can put the Greg Land cover up on the screen really briefly. It's not terrible, but it is Greg Land who traces a lot of his characters. I think this cover looks really similar to so many previous Greg Land covers and doesn't really do anything new for the Phoenix ongoing series. But this is really excellent stuff. I like the main creative team of Alessandro Miracolo and Stephanie Phillips. I think it's really cool that Marvel is tapping some of these up and coming creators, as opposed to having writers who just worked on so many disparate comic books across the line here. Hopefully, these From the Ashes books will feature just so much energy here, because I feel like a lot of even their mainstream talent, like Gail Simone, has to be super hungry after being away from, a big licensed property like the X-Men for a little bit. Man, great cover. Really like the expression that Casada is able to implement on Jean's face here. Personally, though, of course, this Peach Momoko one has to be my favorite. The way that Momoko is able to interpret Phoenix's new design here to me is just so beautiful here. Nobody Except Me says, checking in. Krakoa is finally over. Let's see where this new age goes. That Phoenix series has some wonderful covers. Yeah, totally agree with everything you're saying, Nobody Except Me. Good to have you on the stream, too. Okay, so frankly, I think there's a ton of stuff to be excited about over for this Phoenix book. But thankfully, Marvel even announced some brand new information about the Storm series, which I bet a lot of you are also really interested in. So this upcoming Storm series features writing from the excellent Marewa Ayadeli, who worked on a really awesome Iron Man comic book recently called I Am Iron Man. Plus, it has artwork from one of our very favorite X-Men artists from the last iteration, Krakoa, Lucas Wernick. He did such tremendous work over on here. I said Iron Man, I met Marvel with Moon Knight, Black, White, and Blood, and I Am Iron Man. Lucas Wernick, the superstar artist known for his recent works on epics like Immortal X-Men and Sins of Sinister, Wernick designed a stunning new costume for Storm's exciting new venture into solo storytelling. We had the chance to look at Lucas Wernick's new design for Storm in a lot of context in our very recent stream, which you can also go ahead and check out here. I think Wernick was able to contribute some really interesting new additions to Storm's costume. I feel like he's made a lot of minor tweaks, but they've really done a great job emphasizing some of the traits of her personality and making things a little bit more complicated while still showing a sense of progression across her costumes here. Storm has always been a prime protector of the planet. With the loss of Krakoa, that position becomes more important to her than ever. From her new superhero headquarters, Storm begins making decisions that will forecast the future of the Marvel Universe. Her bold actions will stir forces around and beyond Earth, calling forth enemies that will match her strength and determination. Storm has never needed a throne to rule the skies. Now, watch in awe as her new solo series elevates her to heights only she can reach. Aurora Monroe has lived many lives. She's been a thief, goddess, X-Man, and a queen, and now an Avenger. She's the most prominent, respected, and powerful mutant on the stage, on the world stage, and in that role, she intends to be a force of positive change. I've really been waiting across this Storm article to see what some of the upcoming plot ramifications and what Storm is actually going to be doing either on the main Avengers roster or in her main solo series. It looks like we have finally gotten to the paragraph in our Storm article where Marvel is going to be detailing what exactly Storm is doing. First up, we learn that some of the opening issues takes place over at a nuclear facility in Oklahoma City that draws Storm from her sanctuary in Atlanta. So we got a lot of information in that one sentence. First off, Storm is currently working at Atlanta, and she's responding to a threat from Oklahoma City. So she's headed into a moral conflict that will test her iron resolve. As one of the year's biggest launches, it'll be packed with guest stars, including Storm's fellow Avengers like X Factor's Frenzy. Really like the character of Frenzy. Happy to see that she's going to show up in Storm here. On the challenges Storm will face, Ayadeli said, as a fan of Storm, her duties to the X-Men, and what she stands for in various real-world communities. I would also like to assure the audience that Storm is in danger. Extremely so. We love Aurora Monroe, and that is why we have crafted a thrilling story that will put the strength of her character on wide open display. But when you're an Omega-level mutant, few things can test your limits, and even fewer can shatter those limits, he continued. For our Storm series, One thing we would like fans to remember is that there are threats that are beyond Omega. Prepare yourselves for an extraordinary display of superheroism that leaves Knuckles bloody, knees bashed in, and mountains cratered. We are building towards gargantuan conflicts that will shake the universe, from planet Earth to the dimension of manifestation, he explains. We are crafting stories filled to the brim with humanity, love, mystery, adventure, heartbreak, and all out action. The more I start to read about this article, the more I start to get clued into the fact that Marvel is probably planning something secret for this Storm book and probably doesn't want to talk about a lot of the narrative implications. I wonder if something in this Storm series will coincide with either the upcoming Avengers series or another From the Ashes comic. I feel like Marvel clearly has something up their sleeve with this book. Whether or not they want to tell us at this stage is entirely up to them. I remember when Marvel Comics first announced Nick Spencer's Captain America run, and they initially tried to play it off like it was a normal comic book series. And then when the issue came out, they started talking about some of the Hydra affiliations. So sometimes it's best not to take everything Marvel says at face value. All right, we have a quote here from Tom Brevoort, the editor behind Marvel's most shattering events. Lucas Wernick, oh no, excuse me, this is a quote. Let's go ahead and read the quote right now. Tom Brevoort, the editor behind Marvel's most universe-shattering events, Lucas Wernick, the incredible artist known for his genius-level attention to design and character work, and I are cooking with supernovas on this series. So join us on this journey that promises to be exciting till the bittersweet end. Get ready for an eternal storm. We have a quote here from Lucas Wernick, the artist. I still can't believe Marvel gave me this gift. Storm is a character that I love, that I have so much respect for what this character represents to people. We're working with so much love and devotion on this project, and I hope fans enjoy it as much as we enjoy making it. Drawn by acclaimed artist Mateus Manhanini, the series covers will be just as breathtaking as Storm's feats. Check out his debut issue cover now, along with Wernick's original design sheet for Storm's costume, and be there when the clouds part on Storm's new era this October. All right, we were already really excited about the Storm book, whether it be the artwork coming in here from Lucas Wernick or some of the writing from Rewa Ayadeli. I feel like Marvel is really teasing the fact that there's some big upcoming plot revelations in these Storm and Jean Grey books, but aren't yet ready to tell us everything that they have in store. Okay, so today we were a little bit lighter on news for the week. I want to go ahead and close out our stream with something a little bit different per what we usually do here. I want to explore what's next for Marvel's upcoming Kid Venom series. I feel like Kid Venom is a character that has so much potential over at Marvel. We've praised so much of what Marvel Comics has been doing with the Venom property as a whole here. Let's learn what manga creator Taigami has in store for Kid Venom in this news article written by Will Salmon over at Newsarama Games Radar. Marvel's new Kid Venom series brings a manga style to its young symbiote hero. We take an early peek at the first issue of the new series. Manga creator Taigami made his Marvel debut with last year's Summer of Symbiotes initiative and a series of backup stories in the Death of the Venomverse limited series. That comic introduced Kintaro to the Marvel Universe, a young boy from 20th century Japan who bonded with the symbiote Clinter in order to protect his people from an attack. I love the fact that Marvel is tapping on some of these Eastern creators to work on their comic books that are in continuity. Having Peach Momoko work on Ultimate X-Men right now is such a joy across the Marvel Universe. I think seeing Tagami realize Kid Venom in this Kid Venom series also could be so much fun. Kintaro is now getting his 4-issue series not only illustrated but also written by Taigami. As Marvel's synopsis for the first issue reveals, Kid Venom 1 begins in Japan in the year 977, but the publisher has also revealed that it won't be long before Kintaro finds himself in the present day. We've got an exclusive preview of some unlettered pages from the first issue in the gallery below, which show off Taigami's distinctive art style, as well as John Tyler Christopher's distinctive negative space variant cover. Yeah, I'm already taking a look at the interior artwork from Taigami here. I feel like there's something about the way that he's able to flesh out these expressions for his protagonist that just show how interesting this is as a series here. Also, I'm loving the blue, black, and white hues featured towards the bottom of the page and how they create such an interesting element of animosity for the protagonist. Yeah, we have really interesting text and an Eastern sensibility teased on this cover too. Once again, just beautiful interpretations of artwork. We have a really solid sense of motion introduced here from Taigami. Very cool to see this kind of severed symbiote head here showcasing just how interesting Taigami is able to interpret motion between these sequences. And then we have the John Tyler Christopher negative space cover doing a great job juxtaposing the white and black hues seen in the background of the cover over with the character of Kid Venom. Marvel's official synopsis for the issue reads, "Embrace your inner Venom. Japan, 977, Kid Venom has made his presence known to the evil symbiotes, taking people and creatures hostage. But who else has their eye on Kintaro and his symbiote? The world of Kid Venom expands as new characters and dangers are revealed. Breakout manga creator Taigami continues his vision of Kid Venom in this brand new series. Taigami explained in a statement that Kid Venom is inspired by Japanese folklore. There were already many Venoms and there were enough variations. So I thought it had to be something totally new to be recognized," he said of how Kintaro differs from other symbiote characters. In Japan, there are several famous folklores such as Momotaro or Orashi Mataro. Among them, there is a story of Kintaro. The legend is about a boy who was very strong, living with his mother in Mount Ashigara. He later was hired by Minamoto Yorimitsu, a very high-ranked samurai, and defeats many yokai. Later, he becomes one of the 4 samurai of Minamoto Yorimitsu. This story is a mix of folklore and a historical story from the Heian era of Japan. So, when I mixed symbiote to the legend of Kintaro, Kid Venom was born. Kid Venom is published by Marvel on July 10th. All right, very excited about the upcoming work over with Kid Venom. Let's go ahead and close out our stream today with Marvel Comics X-Men Monday. Give me just one moment. I'll see if we can put this up on the screen here. Okay, X-Men Monday 253, Ashley Allen, Preeti Chabir, Steve Folks, and Stephanie Phillips talk X-Men Blood Hunt one-shots. This is Chris Hassan's news article over on Adventures in Poor Taste talking about the future of the X-Men line of comics. Today we're going to preview some of the ancillary tie-in one-shots to this upcoming Marvel really big storyline here called Blood Hunt. Welcome, X-fans, to another uncanny edition of X-Men Monday at Adventures in Poor Taste. If you've been reading Marvel's Blood Hunt event, led by X-Men writer Jed MacKay, you knew it was only a matter of time before mutants found themselves in the middle of all sorts of vampire mayhem. We already spoke to writer Tom Waltz about his upcoming Wolverine Blood Hunt miniseries, and now it's time to chat with the writers behind the upcoming X-Men Blood Hunt one-shots. So here's a list of our upcoming X-Men Blood Hunt one-shots. We have a Jubilee issue written by Preeti Chabir, a Magic issue coming in from Ashley Allen, and the Psylocke series is written over from Steve Folks. In addition here, the Phoenix Jean Grey writer Stephanie Phillips is writing X-Men Blood Hunt, Laura Kinney the Wolverine. Without further ado, let's welcome returning guests Preeti, Steve, Stephanie, and X-Men Monday first-timer Ashley. Welcome to the special Blood Hunt edition of X-Men Monday. Let's kick things off with a question from X-Fan Maul, who wanted to know, what it is about your spotlight character that makes them so compelling to you as a writer. So it looks like Preeti Chabira is the writer of the Jubilee one shot at Marvel Comics. We've already read about how this one shot is going to explore some of Jubilee's vampirism that's been such an interesting subplot lingering around the X-Men comics for a long time. I want to see what Preeti Chabira has to say about Jubilee's vampirism as well. I think particularly for the Blood Hunt event, it's the fact that Jubilee was a vampire. I was excited to explore a little bit of that in the writing and what it might do to see her and the world getting impacted by these creatures so she can understand them on a personal level. Yeah, this cover on X-Men Blood Hunt Jubilee is really beautiful and shows Jubilee in the super youthful stance here that just showcases so much personality across the issue. Okay, Ashley Allen, the writer of the Magic series, says, "What isn't compelling about Magic as a character? She's so fun to write, her power set alone had endless possibilities to play around with. Teleportation, her soul sword, let alone her ability to use spells. We were able to take full advantage of her powers in this fight against a vampire horde. However, while her powers are great, what resonates with me most about Magic is the heart behind the character. She's an angel in the guise of a demon who is trying to come to terms with her past so she could make a better future for herself and others. I hope that comes through in this story because at the end of the day, that heart is what drives Magic as a hero and what makes her a character." I mixed up those two words, but no, they were both in that response there from Ashley Allen. For me, in terms of the upcoming X-Men comic books, it feels like not everybody is super familiar with Magic as a character. At this point, it feels like people know who Rogue are at Marvel. It feels like people know who characters like Jean Grey are, but I'm still waiting for some of the general public to have a little bit more awareness for some of these upcoming X-Men female characters like Madeline Pryor or Magic or even Psylocke in some instances as well. Steve Folks says that Quanin is super compelling because despite her being as old as I am, her actual time on the page is pretty brief. So much of the history of Psylocke, the psychic ninja, has been with Betsy Braddock inhabiting Quanin's body. And that visual and power set made a huge impact on fandom. But because of the pretty winding road Quanin took as a character, she spent a lot of her own history pretty sidelines. I'd consider her to be one of the characters who benefited the most from the Krakoan era, probably alongside Sync and Firestar as far as getting the chance to really take the spotlight and get their own platform. You know, when I reflect on everything that Quanin has done in terms of the Krakoan era, for me it feels like Krakoa has been so great to both Quanin and Betsy. Splitting these two characters up and making them like different factions of the X-Men publishing line has just really added like even more excellent female characters to the books. I feel like this has been a big long-term storytelling decision for X-Men's editorial that has just played off beautifully. The thing about Quanin is that almost every time she's appeared has been marked by tragedy, manipulation at the hands of Matsuo, suffering from the legacy virus while Revanche, losing her daughter. Quanin has had a hard life, but these last few years, from fallen angels to Hellions to uncanny Avengers and beyond, has been such a triumphant surge forward for canon as her own character and as her own defining hero of Psylocke. I was thrilled to get to contribute a small part of that with this one shot, especially alongside Lin Yoshi, who was such a brilliant collaborator on our Sunfire story and our portion of Dead X-Men. Shout out to Dead X-Men. I think that book was a little bit convoluted, but it was so ambitious, and a lot of what it accomplished on the page was so good. So much of Steve Folks' work on so many X-Men comics, especially in terms of Fall of X, have been magical. When I got invited to do this story, the first two things I asked were if Lynn was available and if I could include Grey Crow. Thankfully, both were affirmatives. Stephanie Phillips says, honestly, for me, it's the action sequences. I love writing fight scenes with an artist, and writing for Laura is incredibly fun. I think that how a character fights is really reflective of personality. Laura does not fight the same way as Captain America or Jean Grey. She takes risks, she's creative, and her entire body becomes the weapon. It was great to see her get to write a one-shot that really highlights her unique fighting style. Yeah, for Wolverine, for the character of Logan, he really fights in a sloppy, kind of like bar-esque way. So watching the way that both Laura and Logan approach situations differently as Wolverine characters is a super interesting concept as well. Yeah, this Peach Momoko Jubilee cover on X-Men Blood Hunt, also really, really cool. For readers learning about the X-Men Blood Hunt one-shots for the first time, what's your elevator pitch for the story? Preeti says, in the midst of the world going dark and vampires attacking, Jubilee is doing what she does best, saving people. But when things get out of hand, she has to call on a very few friends apropos from her past. Ashley Allen says, most dangerous game meets Demon Slayer. When a group of vampires descend on a small town in her homeland, magic must lay siege to the stronghold and outsmart the horde and infernal general. However, who is the hunter and who is being hunted is the question the vampires should be asking themselves. Yeah, great work from Peach Momoko. Frankly, I wish she drew more of the Blood Hunt covers. I feel like these are even better than some of the main series works here as well. And then here's the Psylocke cover on this book too. All right, here's a Steve Folks reaction to this question here. He says, up top, while you should be reading the event of the summer, clarifying, yes, he did write the issue can be enjoyed as part of the event or as standalone. Quanon and Greycrow retire to Osaka to recuperate from the hardships mutants have faced in recent days. Darkness falls across Japan as terrors both modern and ancient flood the neon-drenched streets. Psylocke and her lover are all that stand between the innocent citizens and blood-drenched premise. So much of Steve Folks' work has been so good, especially for the X-Men characters. It feels like he has such a strong handle on the franchise. We've read a lot of Steve's responses too in terms of these X-Men Monday articles. He is just so great at working with these characters and really shows like all this long-term thinking for both the Marvel Universe and X-Men characters that really makes me appreciate the franchise even more than I did previously. You should know that Lynn and colorist Ruth Redmond have just obliterated the art on the issue. This is one of the most dynamic, thrilling, action-forward books I've ever worked on. I left a lot of the pacing up to Lynn, and she delivered and beyond. Once the curtain of night falls on page 3, the rest of the issue is slicing, dicing, biting, shooting, chewing, chomping, eating, exploding, and other forms of gruesome fights between Psylocke, Greycrow, and Japan's undead, led by our spin on a famous Japanese urban legend reimagined here as leader of Osaka's vampire hordes. Absolutely love that Fox is reorienting the setting of the issue to Japan. Also, seeing characters like Psylocke and Greycrow, really recuperate and reorient here as lovers in Japan too. Super interesting premise here. Stephanie Phillips says it's set in the larger scope of the Blood Hunt storyline where some vampires have managed to blot out the sun and plunge the world into perpetual night. Some vampires are trying to experiment with mutant blood, hoping to give themselves added advantages in their quest for world domination. Our one-shot looks at Laura infiltrating a group of vampires that have gotten hold of mutant blood from a very familiar source. And if they are successful in using this blood, it could have some pretty dire consequences for literally everyone. Love this cover. For me, it really makes me remember the character of Laura Kinney before she came Wolverine and was initially known as X-23. Now for some individual questions. Preeti, your story solicitation says Jubilee's past as a vampire is coming back to take a big bite out of her. What can you tease about how Jubilee's past as a vampire factors into your story? This was a question we had too, and I'm happy to see AIPT asking the question in a little bit more of a pointed way here as we get to the bottom of this article. Jubilee had to experience some hard lessons to hold on to her mutant self when she was a vampire, and she wouldn't have survived without intervention. Now she has to weigh paying that forward with the fact that there is a very real vampiric threat out there. X-fan Emily wanted to know whether Jubilee's fireworks actually hurt vampires in terms of light-giving ways. Preeti says this is a discussion we had while writing. They don't hurt the vampires. They are an impactful distraction technique. And then we also have some of the interiors from Enid Balam on X-Men Blood Hunt Jubilee. They actually look pretty nice. Ashley, your story solicitation hints at Ilyana returning home to Russia. What made you want to send Magic, a character who's no stranger to more fantastical settings, to a more grounded setting for your story? Yeah, the idea of putting Magic back in Russia, very, very good idea that'll make it really distinctive alongside so many other X-Men books. Ashley says, with everything happening in recent X-Men issues, I wanted Magic to be able to take a beat to reflect on her past. Brilliant. Genius. The best way to do this was to send her to a location linked to her childhood, Russia. Being so close to home, Magic must confront conflicting emotions within her and acknowledge the experiences she went through and how they can inform and help her present situation lead to a better future. And what better setting to do that than her childhood home? Of course, this issue focuses on the multi-stage siege set against the vampiric horde. But at the heart of it is a woman trying to make sense of her past and how she moves forward in the world. Ultimately, a grounded setting worked well for that context. Okay, I totally admit that I may have missed this, but I'd be super interested to see Magic reuniting with Colossus after so much of the drama that happened in that main X-Force series. So really hoping that we'll see some of that subtext here as we get to explore Magic returning to her home, which I think would naturally make her think about her brother as well. X-Fan Son of Darkchild said, Magic is a character who doesn't often get to deal with supernatural threats or use her vast array of spells because she's usually on teams where she's treated just as a sword fighter who can teleport. Magic fans have been chomping at the bit for years for a character named Magic to actually use magic. Was getting to do a solo story with Magic, like being given all the toys to play with since she can do many things. I want to talk about this. I think this question is like a little bit disrespectful towards like Marvel's main writers. Jerry Duggan has been doing good stuff with Magic. There's been several comics throughout the Krakoan era that have done good stuff with Magic. Now, it might not be like as prominent as you want. Magic might not be like the main protagonist of that storyline, but there's still been a lot of really fun moments for her during the Krakoan line of comics. And I feel like being like so kind of like aggro like that, or just really like reducing one plot thread that all of these like Marvel Comics editorial workers, have processed for such a long time here, like really detracts from what we get on the actual page. I would have really loved if, this commenter, this person who asked the question, would have at least attributed what Marvel Comics actually worked with in terms of Magic recently at the publisher. There was a really, really good Jerry Duggan issue with Magic extremely recently. Ilyana's powers are so vast that as a writer, it's a dream to be able to choreograph fight scenes, especially when thinking about all the interesting ways her powers can be used and combined. There's a scene in the story towards the end of the issue that was especially fun to choreograph when Magic's abilities really take center stage. Don't worry, she does use magic a bit during this issue, but hopefully in the future, there are even more chances to let her spellcasting abilities be highlighted. I feel like this is a situation where it doesn't matter what you do, people are just going to be upset. Another overlooked aspect of Magic is her battle prowess and strategic mind. After all, she was Queen of Limbo and a captain of Krakoa. So it was fun to let this aspect shine through in this issue, especially when facing off against a vampiric general and his army. God, the Jesus Hervis interiors for X-Men Blood Hunt Magic are so good. So good. There's just so much personality in the expressions for the characters. The page designs are so good too. The expressions just have so much personality leveraged in the interiors. Really great covers on this one, too. Okay. X-Fan Ash is excited to see Quanin and Grey Crow together again. Ash was wondering what your favorite part of their dynamic was. Steve says, I love Psylocke and Grey Crow and Hellions. I was really eager to put them back together for this issue. As much as I loved writing the dysfunction of a couple like Maddie and Havoc and Dark X-Men, there is something so romantic about a dynamic like Quanin and John's. I would assume, without reading the rest of Steve Folks' answer, that the reason why the couple of Quanin and John are so interesting in terms of the Marvel Universe is that they've gone through so much, like, independently. Having them reunite together, especially in this, like, very late generation of X-Men, just feels really kind of, like, epic and triumphant here. Let's see what Folks has to say. He says, each can really recognize and respect the other's past without being burdened by it. In my eyes, neither judges the other for where they've been, and while I definitely think Quanin leads in the relationship, John sees her softer side and can get on that wavelength when needed without making her feel vulnerable in ways that undermine her. As much as this issue is very vampire forward, there's a lot of romance. Probably the most romantic issue I've done at Marvel. I think I was right. Steve really identifies the fact that both, Quanin and Grey Crow have been through so much across Marvel Universe currently. Watching them in this very late interpretation of X-Men continuity is just really interesting. X-fans Luan, Muhammad, Sato, and Satoru all wanted to know about Quanin's powers. I'm going to skip this question. I just don't like it. Lin Yoshi lends some more manga sensibility to the interiors for this X-Men Bloodhunt Psylocke issue. Really liking some of the more melodramatic expressions from both Quanin and John here. Once again, great visual interpretation of these individual panels. Really strong bleeds in negative space. Man, it really feels like these manga creators are just able to step into the world of comics so easily. I just see them consistently like compelling in this medium. Yeah, loving that like Eastern interpretation of this like yokai character. I think this flash of a purple at the top of the page is really brilliant. Frankly, I think this whole issue could probably stay in black and white with some accents of color and probably get a ton of mileage from Marvel. Frankly, I think you should be really excited about these Bloodhunt issues. The creative teams are really, really good. Okay, Stephanie, your story solicitation says the vampires will stop at nothing in their bid for supremacy, including capturing mutants for hellacious experiments to boost their own power. Those hellacious experiments given Laura's own past. Is it fair to say this rescue mission is personal for her? Philip says yes, absolutely. It will make Laura want to stop the vampires even more. But there's something else that will make Laura question what she's doing. There's someone else that will question the vampires that have been taken hostage to be revealed in this story. Laura will have to figure out if saving them is the right thing to do. That's a really tough spot for Laura to be in. Finally, I wanted to use this opportunity to talk about another powerful and extremely powerful X-Woman you're writing in the next great X-Men era, the Phoenix. From a writing point of view, is there any crossover in how you approach writing a street-level character like Laura and a cosmic powerhouse like Jean? Yeah, very thrilled to see Stephanie talk about how she approaches these really prominent female figures in the Marvel Universe that are at really different points in their superhero career. Philip says, they're pretty different characters, and the Bloody Vampire one-shot is also wildly different from the ongoing with Jean. I'll be spending a lot of time with Jean and getting to know her in a new way. Reading a character and loving them is one thing, but being charged with their voice is always an entirely different kind of bond that builds with creators and the characters we work with. I don't really think approaching any two characters or stories in the same way ever. Writing a big cosmic story for Jean has been incredibly fun and rewarding. Getting to really take Phoenix and the readers on a giant tour of the cosmic universe. We'll have more to talk about that as the series gets closer. Okay, here's a look at some of Robert Gill's interiors on X-Men Blood Hunt, Laura Kinney, the Wolverine. Definitely seeing some progression for Robert Gill as an artist. This is one of the most ambitious pages I've probably seen from him to date. I feel like a lot of the individual issues I've had with some of his artwork in the past has been a lack of focus on the details and anatomy for some of his characters. I'm seeing so much improvement here. Great perspective as well on this opening page for a preview of Laura Kinney, the Wolverine. Okay, so the first issue in the X-Men tie-ins is Jubilee on sale June 12th, Magic is on sale June 26th, and Cyclops is on sale July 3rd. Finally, we have the Laura Kinney issue on July 17th. And looks like Adventures in Poor Taste is teasing an upcoming article, an upcoming interview here for Steve Folks talking about X-Men Era of Apocalypse. Okay, everybody, I just want to say that was the end of our stream today. I want to thank everybody so much for coming aboard. If you are still here, it would mean a lot for me if you were able to go ahead and like the stream, as well as subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this entire stream here. Next weekend, I will be skipping the stream here because I have something really busy to do. But on Wednesday and Thursday, we should be dropping some brand new video reviews for upcoming Marvel comics. This week, we will not have a DC review this upcoming Tuesday because I just think that it'd be good to maybe take a break and try something a little bit different here. So in the very near future, we'll be back with an upcoming DC video review, and our Marvel videos will still be on time as usual here, either Wednesday or Thursday. Thank you so much for coming to check out our stream today, and we'll be back probably the weekend after next to talk about the future of Marvel Comics, and this upcoming Wednesday, Thursday to talk about some brand new video reviews in the end of Krakoa. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, and we'll be back very soon to talk the future of Marvel Comics. See you soon. Bye.